That day, Xu Zhengqing left earlier, most likely due to the heavy rain. His parents had driven to pick him up. Before leaving, he asked Jianxing, "Do you want to leave together?" Shaking her head, Jianxing replied, "No, I brought an umbrella." They weren't close, and so his question was likely just a formality. Xu Zhengqing nodded, not saying anything more. Through the curtain of rain, Jianxing watched as the young boy walked into the rain, bent over to get in the car. The driver's door half open, Xu Zhengqing's dad looked over their way and seemed to wave. Jianxing returned his gaze, only raising her hand to wave back a few seconds later. When she got home, Jianxing was unavoidably half-soaked. Worried, her grandmother had been unable to fall asleep and immediately came out when she heard noise. Seeing her drenched, her grandmother kept saying, "Look at you, soaking wet. Why didn't you have your mom pick you up?" "It's all right." Jianxing was indeed a little cold. She shook off her grandmother's hand. "I'm going to change." Her grandmother hurriedly agreed. While Jianxing was changing, her grandmother waited at the door. After she changed, her grandmother brought her a bowl of ginger soup, insisting, "You should wash your hair." In a little while, Jianxing replied. She took a couple of sips from the bowl, checked the time and told her grandmother, "You should go to sleep now. I'm going to wash after I finish this. Don't forget to wash, even if it seems troublesome now. Otherwise, you'll have headaches when you get older." Her grandmother insisted as if she wanted to wash Jianxing's hair herself. Jianxing laughed. "All right, I understand." That night, the rain continued to pour without any sign of stopping. Jianxing finished her soup, washed her hair, but still ended up experiencing nightmares due to a headache. In her dream, there was chaos with large and small cats. The large cat killed the small one. The kitten was buried in a flower bed, which grew into a towering tree. The storm that followed broke Lu Cheng's leg. The hospital was filled with the smell of antiseptic. Jianxing sat and cried on the floor, beseeched by a hand. She looked up to see Xu Zhengqing's mother, who smiled at her. In a while, she walked away. A shaky kitten trailed behind her. Step by step, they walked towards Xu Zhengqing's father in the hospital corridor. He waved at her while Jianxing, struggling to lift her hand, looked down to find a thick iron chain around her wrist. She turned around in fear and confusion to find her grandmother. Her grandmother cheerily asked her, "Jianxing, drink this quickly." "Jianxing, Jianxing." The voice echoed from afar, each word hit her hard. It was a harsh impact, compressing Jianxing's heartbeat. She was gasping for air, about to suffocate, when she abruptly opened her eyes at the brink of it. Daybreak. The light before her slowly withdrew, replaced by a somewhat dirty ceiling. A cobweb in the corner of the ceiling made one's head spin while looking at it, layer upon layer. Jianxing frowned, her hearing gradually recovering, with her grandmother's voice near her ear. Turning her head, Jianxing saw her grandmother holding a bowl of traditional medicine. "First, get up, drink this, then you can sleep again." It took Jianxing a while to sluggishly sit up. She took the bowl, lowered her head, and a droplet of sweat fell into the bowl. Thinking she was crying, her grandmother anxiously said, "What's the matter? Feeling unwell?" "Oh dear, I told your mom to come and pick you up. Look at you now, you've been ill with a cold and fever for half a month." Feeling somewhat tired, Jianxing forced a smile. Her voice was hoarse as she just woke up. "It's nothing, just sweat, just a cold and fever. Why would I cry?" Hearing her voice, the grandmother's heart ached more. "Stop talking, drink this quickly, then sleep a bit more. You'll feel better after sweating it out." After finishing the medicine, Jianxing lied down again. She kept nodding, but she didn't want to sweat anymore, yet she didn't want her grandmother to worry. She could only keep awake, watching the daylight, looking into the darkness. It was probably deep autumn. This cold lasted almost a month before she finally recovered. Initial exams came just as she was fully recovered. Since they hadn't split the classes into arts and science yet, they had to take exams for 9 subjects. The exams lasted for 2.5 days. Before self-study on Thursday evening, the exam and timetable were posted. Zulu remembered for half a month. After seeing it, she didn't go back to her seat, but stood in front of the blackboard and waved at Jianxing. "Jianxing, do you want to see it?" Jianxing shook her head and said, "I won't go, you can check it for me." Zulu ran back. "Ah, it's divided by student ID. You will just take the exam in our class. Oh my, how I envy you." Jianxing didn't fully understand, but she felt a bit nervous. She pressed down on her finger, making a crisp sound, and then turned her head to ask, "What does that mean?" Every class 1 student takes it in class 1. Every class 2 student takes it in class 2. You are class 3 student, so in class 3. God, Zulu repeated, enviable. Every class 3 student. Jianxing remembered that Xu Zhengqing in their class also had the number 3. The top 3 students in their class had the same score, but Xu Zhengqing, because of his last name, was ranked 3rd. That means they are in the same exam room. Snap. Another crisp sound. Hiss. Jianxing realized with hindsight that it hurt, taking a breath of cold air. Zulu also hissed. Gosh, it hurts, doesn't it? Jianxing gently rubbed her finger, bent her head, nearly imperceptibly chuckled. It's okay. Zulu held her face and said nothing. All their conversations usually started and ended with Zulu, but today Jianxing asked proactively, which class are you in? 19. Zulu's tone was somewhat unusually unhappy. She glanced at Jianxing. Didn't I tell you? It's divided by student ID. Were you even paying attention to what I was saying? Oh, sorry, I wasn't paying much attention, Jianxing said. Never mind, Zulu sighed. Now all I can think of is how to do well in the exam. Your papers usually go quite smoothly, don't they? It's okay. Usually exam questions are simpler than daily practice. Hearing this, Zulu blinked, then muttered quietly, hoping, I hope so. The first exam was Chinese. The timing was the same as the college entrance exam. It started at 9 in the morning, but by 7:30, there were already some people studying on their own in the class. Jianxing arrived early as well. Zulu wasn't there till 8:30. She was shocked to see so many people in the classroom already. Why are you all so early? I just didn't have anything to do at home, so I came over, one of them said. In fact, Jianxing woke up before 6 o'clock. The afternoon previous was okay, but as soon as she lay in bed at night, her heart started to race. She tossed and turned all night, barely managing to fall asleep in the early hours of the morning. After waking up, her heart beat even faster. She couldn't stay at home any longer. She just wanted to get to school as early as possible. Zulu looked at the others again. What time did they come? I don't know, people were already here when I arrived. It seems to be about the same as usual, Jianxing replied. She had a Chinese textbook in front of her, flipping the pen around as she read, her tone mixed with a faint relaxation. It seemed like everything was normal, yet somehow different. Zulu stared at Jianxing for a long time before responding unhappily. Well, I didn't know I should come early. I'm sure I won't do as well as everyone else this time. It's okay, just keep calm, Jianxing countered, looking back at the clock on the blackboard behind her. There were still 20 minutes left before 9 o'clock. Others began to leave for the exam room, and Jianxing stood up as well. Aren't you leaving? Zulu was still upset. She stood up and murmured, You don't have to, why do you get up? Jianxing laughed. I'm not sitting here. She was number 3 of class 3, so she should be sitting in the 3rd row. Also, I need to go to the restroom, she declared. Zulu pouted, then I'll go with you. Sure, Jianxing agreed. When the 2 people came out of the bathroom, they just happened to run into a group of people walking out, each person holding only one pen, exuding a carefree and relaxed atmosphere. Zulu whispered, They don't seem nervous at all. They're confident, Jianxing replied. In this class, they all don't regard midterm exams much. But aren't they afraid of being eliminated? Zulu asked. The first and second classes are science classes. If anyone in their class wants to study arts, they can only come to our class. To them, this may not necessarily be considered elimination. After all, there are no other options for them, Jianxing said. What if they can't get into our class? Zulu challenged. Jianxing chuckled. How could that happen? Yes, Zulu, with an unclear mood, wiped the water on her hands. Passing the 3rd class, she said, Then I'll go first. Okay, good luck, Zulu forced a smile. As Zulu walked away, Jianxing watched her, subtly furrowing her brows. After a while, she went back into the classroom. Just as she stepped in, something came flying from the side. Startled, Jianxing instinctively stepped back. Looking down, a black morning light pen lay by her foot, just like her own pen. Quietly, her heart started pounding again. She pursed her lips, bent down to pick it up, took a step into the class, turned her head and saw Xu Zhengqing sitting in the first row. Xu Zhengqing stood up, apologizing. I'm sorry, did I hit you? Jianxing shook her head, saying no. She intended to place the pen straight on Xu Zhengqing's desk, but to her surprise, he reached out his hand. Her wrist shivered slightly, and then she handed the pen to him based on instinct. After receiving it, Xu Zhengqing made a few strokes on the scratch paper. The writing was intermittent, the ink was broken. He lightly chi-chied, somewhat speechless. Jianxing spoke up, "I have a new one." Xu Zhengqing looked up. Seeing that he didn't answer, Jianxing hurriedly added, "It's the same as yours, you should be used to it." Suddenly, someone bumped into her from behind. Jianxing did not notice as all her focus was on Xu Zhengqing. The person bumped quite suddenly. Jianxing lost her balance, stumbling a step forward, her hands landing directly on Xu Zhengqing's desk. Xu Zhengqing probably feared she would fall, one hand stabilizing the desk, the other hand holding her shoulder. Suddenly, numbness spread from her shoulder throughout her body. Her hands seemed not her own, and her heart was about to jump out of her chest. She held her breath, her eyes forgetting to blink. She just stared blankly, focused on the 2 strokes on the white scratch paper. The various shades of the broken ink marks resembled her heart circuit diagram. "I'm sorry, classmate," the person behind her yelled. "God. Dayuyan, apologize." The one called Dayuyan was from another examination room. Hearing this, he rushed in, raising his hand to apologize. Sorry, didn't notice." He looked up and said, "Yo, brother Xu." Xu Zhengqing let go of Jianxing, merely nodding and saying, "So excited, are you preparing to be nominated for the Hongzi division, huh?" He, dare not, Dayuyan laughed. "As long as you perform normally, I won't even get second place." "Exactly. You're so excitable only because Xu is brother Xu's surname. You have nothing to do with this catfish." The man who bumped into Jianxing apologized again to Jianxing. "I'm sorry for bothering you." "It's okay." Jianxing got up, her head down, hurriedly said to Xu Zhengqing, "I'll bring you a pen." "What happened to the pen?" Dayuyan asked. "It fell," Xu Zhengqing said. "Use mine." "Mine's for you," Dayuyan said, fishing a pen from his pocket and placing it on Xu Zhengqing's desk. Jianxing had just reached her desk and stopped rummaging through her drawer when she heard this, clenching the pen in her hand. "Jianxing," Xu Zhengqing called out, "No need, I got one." Her heart was lifted by his call and gently put down again. She looked at Xu Zhengqing and said naturally, "Okay." Then she silently put the pen back in its place. When she sat down, Jianxing realized that the person who bumped into her was sitting right behind her. He was from class 4. After he sat down, he apologized to Jianxing again. "I'm really sorry about earlier." Jianxing smiled and responded, "It's okay." Soon the bell rang. The invigilator entered with the test papers, explained a few rules of the exam, and began to distribute them. The test was indeed simple, only the essay part took up some time. See the spring sunlight through the basket, looking at mother. Looking at the theme of the essay, Jianxing thought of the night sky through which the paper plane flew and the young boy. Upon looking up, 2 hours had already passed. The person in front had handed in his paper and left long ago. As Jianxing looked up, her gaze fell on Xu Zhengqing's back. He seemed to have finished as well, leaning rather casually on the table behind him. The young man slightly lowered his head, the back of his neck slightly protruding. He was twirling the pen in his hand, the morning light pouring in from the door, illuminating him. His shadow lightly fell onto Jianxing's desk. Stifling her breath, Jianxing stared at it for a long time. Then, as the corridor started getting noisier, she gently leaned on the table. She carefully stretched out her finger, her fingertip landing on the edge of the shadow's outline. The encounter with the big gift came abruptly. It seems like she was favored by the light. The midterm exam ended on Sunday morning. As the school bell rang, the last person in each row passed the test papers to the one in front, in succession up to the first person in the row. When passing her paper to the person in front, Jianxing pretended to casually glance at Xu Zhengqing's seat. Unlike the other students in the first row, who would repeatedly turn around to check if all the papers had been collected, Xu Zhengqing calmly leaned against the desk in the row behind him. Only when the second person put the paper next to his arm did he slightly turn his face, lift his hand to receive it and head towards the podium. The invigilator seemed to know Xu Zhengqing. He handed all the papers directly to Xu Zhengqing, which made Xu Zhengqing laugh helplessly. "Who's the teacher here?" "You're the teacher for now." The invigilator picked up the thermal cup on the table. As he walked past Xu Zhengqing, he teased, "Let's go, Mr. Xu. Let's take a walk to the office." Xu Zhengqing could only follow. Jianxing simply cleaned up the rough draft paper on the desk. As Xu Zhengqing turned around, she also turned and walked to her seat. Only when Xu Zhengqing got to the window did he remember that he hadn't taken his pen. He wanted to go back, but then he saw Jianxing by the window. After the exam, the school gave a half-day break. Everyone else was rushing home to rest, but Jianxing leisurely returned to her seat, even finding the time to pull out another test paper. With just a glance, Xu Zhengqing recognized that this was a test paper from last week. One of the questions on today's exam was from this very paper. Thinking about it, Xu Zhengqing looked up and saw a faint furrow between Jianxing's brows. Did she not manage to solve the problem? For some reason, perhaps because he looked a bit longer, Xu Zhengqing slowly remembered some of their chance encounters. It seemed like each time, Jianxing's emotions were quite flat. That wasn't quite like Qin Jiaming's other female friends. As for being obedient, that much wasn't exactly true either. He remembered the way Qin Jiaming had described her. He had said that she was like a nail, but also like a thorn. Although the harm is insignificant, there was no way to ignore her sharpness. Originally, Xu Zhengqing wanted to ask Jianxing to pass him his pen, but with a change of thought, he went back to the classroom himself. Jianxing was still staring at the test paper. When she did this question for the first time, she had some difficulty. Later, after a hasty look at the answer, she had only a hazy understanding, not expecting to encounter it in the exam again. As expected, she was stuck at the same point. Indeed, people can't be lazy. Those who deceive themselves and others will ultimately bear the consequences. Jianxing sighed softly, looked up, her gaze gently settling like a breeze on the first row table. It was completely empty, without any trace of being touched by the light. After the midterm exam, the chill of early winter came with the arrival of Lidong. First snow came to He County just until a week after Zhaoxoxui. On the same day, the results of midterm examinations were announced. Just as the morning self-study began, Zhu Chenglin walked in with the report card in hand. All the students promptly raised their heads to look at him. Zhu Chenglin took the opportunity to joke, "Wow, am I really handsome today?" Lin Yule held his chest, "Mr. Zhu, please stop toying with our hearts, I'm begging you." Zhu Chenglin looked at Lin Yule. "I don't want to toy with you." "What on earth were you thinking during the history exam?" Lin Yule then closed his mouth and the rest of the class went quiet. Zhu Chenglin finally spoke, "Okay, you probably have a rough idea of how you performed. Chen Shi, take the report card first and post it on the back blackboard after class." Chen Shi hurriedly fetched the report card. After Zhu Chenglin left a few instructions, he left. His mood was undecipherable, which left the students in suspense. After he left, they all looked toward Chen Shi. Those sitting close crowded around, while those further away directly ran over. Zulu wanted to know the results, but didn't dare to go over. So she implored Lin Yule, "Can you help me take a look?" Lin Yule readily agreed and slipped over to Chen Shi. Throughout all of this, Jianxing seemed disinterested. Zulu couldn't help but ask Jianxing, "Aren't you nervous?" "I can probably guess my score," Jianxing replied. As Zulu was about to ask how much she got, Lin Yule suddenly yelled, "Holy! Jianxing is incredible. The first place." Everyone in the class instantly looked at Jianxing. Jianxing just raised her head for a moment, barely looking at them before her gaze returned to her task. Everyone else started discussing it except for Zulu, who just grew quiet for a moment. As Lin Yule ran back, he patted Zulu on the back and said, "You're 20th. After he finished, he shouted to Jianxing, "Jianxing, you're amazing." Jianxing just smiled. She knew Zulu was not satisfied with her score and did not bring up the issue of grades during the whole morning self-study. In the first two classes, Zulu didn't seem very enthusiastic either. Jianxing tried not to disturb her as much as possible. During the big break, the scores of other classes were also leaked. The most talked about was, as expected, Xu Zhengqing. First in the class, first in the grade, even scoring better than most students in the Hongzi class. For a while, there was all sorts of gossip, all centered around Xu Zhengqing's exam score. After all, his middle school scores were not notably impressive. "I swear, this is too ridiculous, right? He should just go to Hongzi. Why stay here?" Several of Xu Zhengqing's middle school classmates were pulled aside and interrogated for gossip. In the end, it was Lin Yule who slapped a book on the table and shouted, "Why do you keep asking? He did well on the exam because he's capable. It's none of your business. Where did you learn this busybody habit?" Lin Yule was usually jovial in class and rarely got angry, but everyone knew he wasn't exactly a well-behaved person socially, so him suddenly getting angry was surprisingly effective. The Chinese teacher came in with the test papers at this time. She probably also heard what Lin Yule had said, and she laughed and asked, "What happened? So curious about other people's scores? How did you score?" With the teacher saying this, of course, everyone had to shut up. The first class after announcing the scores was all about reviewing the test papers. Language arts didn't have much to review, the emphasis mostly laid on the essay part. "Ladies and gentlemen," the language arts teacher put down the test paper, leaned on the table, and looked at everyone. The essay theme wasn't too hard, was it? Underneath, there were a few voices, not difficult. "Ah, such a unanimous answer," the language arts teacher said. It's no wonder everyone seemed to diversify. Everyone wrote about the motherland, the blue sky, aviation. Why? Did everyone get inspired by Xu Zhengqing? There were some faint discussions below. Why didn't Xu Zhengqing write about it himself then? A few words prompted many to raise their heads, including Jianxing. Jianxing performed well on her exam, and although she wasn't boastful, she felt happy inside. She has always felt that she was not capable of doing much. However, studying was the one thing that she felt connected to, where the input and rewards were tangible, clearly visible to her. It was something that truly belonged to her. So, since entering high school, this was the first time she genuinely felt happy. However, the sentence spoken by the Chinese language arts teacher twisted her heart into knots. Unconsciously, she clenched her fist, causing a crease in the corner of the test paper. The crumpled paper caused her palm to sting. Without blinking an eye, she stared at her language arts teacher until the teacher started speaking. Why can't anyone see the goodness of a mother? Is it to express a mother's love? If the mother were to help a stranger who had a car accident, if she offered help and care, why couldn't someone else write a 49 points essay? Oh, they even added 2 points for neat handwriting. Rip. A corner of the test paper was torn off. The language arts teacher was still speaking. Nobody noticed that a corner of Jianxing's exam paper was ripped by herself. Moreover, the sound of a tear on a test paper is inaudible. It was her heart that was ripped apart. Her emotions suddenly dipped, leading to a moment of darkness in front of her and then a blurry whiteness. It was like a television screen being blocked by a signal. The fuzzy, crackling noise gradually drowned out the voice of the language arts teacher, as if ripping her thoughts back to 5 years ago. It was the summer vacation between 5th and 6th grade. Xingzhen town was unusually hot for some unknown reason. By July, the temperature had already reached over 30 degrees Celsius. The ground was so scorching that it could potentially melt the soles of shoes. There were very few people in the streets during the day, let alone when the sun was at its zenith. But Bie Siwei still had to come out. There was no distinction between day and night, summer or winter when it came to hauling goods. If you don't do it, well, someone else will. Bie Siwei was never the type to slack off. He was very hard-working and never complained about hardships. On a hot day, sweat dribbled down his face like rain, and with a fiery head, he pedaled the tricycle with enthusiasm. Xingzhen was developing new buildings during those 2 years, and the roads were full of potholes. Perhaps due to the scorching weather and dehydration, Bie Siwei suffered a brief heat stroke and overturned his tricycle when turning. With 200 to 300 pounds of goods on the tricycle plus the nearly 400-pound tricycle, all were squarely pressing down on Bie Siwei. He instinctively wanted to crawl, but the iron bars of the cart pierced through his leg. The ground was burning hot, the dust was like deserts, and he felt himself lying on the ground, blood quickly pooling into a small pit. He could not die like this. There were still a docile daughter and an always smiling old lady at home. Bie Siwei had never been tough in his life, but at that moment, he didn't know where he got the strength to partially pull off the goods from his leg. The goods rolled aside and were stopped by a pair of high heels. Bie Siwei looked up and saw a young woman, her mouth covered, eyes wide open, under the intense sunlight. Bie Siwei could tell that this person was different from him. Her dressing was different. The small diamond on the heel that still sparkled even when buried in the dust was something Bie Siwei normally wouldn't dare look at, but at that moment he pleaded in pain, "Help. Please help." As if finally reacting, the young woman quickly turned around and shouted, "Husband." Bie Siwei had no idea what happened next. All he remembers is waking up in the hospital, where the doctor regretfully informed him that his leg was paralyzed but quickly comforted. "Fortunately, you managed to pull some stuff off you, otherwise you would spend the second half of your life lying in bed." When the doctor said this, Jianxing was beside the sickbed. She was in 5th grade, 12 years old now. She could understand all the sentences, but she was totally incompetent in terms of ability to act. So all she could do was tightly grasping Levi Cheng's hand. Jianxing remembered that Levi Cheng was always scolded by various people. Jianru scolded him for being incompetent, his grandmother scolded him for being too good-tempered, the boss who delivered goods scolded him for being slow in action, but he was tall, despite he was always a little hunched. But on that day, Levi Cheng suddenly became much shorter. For many times, Jianxing could look him in the eye and even gradually look down at him, especially when he was lying in the hospital bed, when she stood by the bed adjusting the hanging water bottle for him. She looked down. Levi Cheng seemed to be about to shrink to the ground. She knew it was a symbol of a person losing strength. She felt very sad, ran to the corridor and cried. The corridor was full of the smell of disinfectant and sweat. Only near the operating room was deserted due to the special location. Jianxing sat on the ground. When her legs became numb, she sat on a chair. At some point, there were 3 more people at the end of the corridor. A young couple and Jianru. The young couple stood shoulder to shoulder, and Jianru stood opposite them. The sun was setting, and the red light came just in between them, like 2 separated worlds. Jianru's clothes were covered in blood and dust. Her hair was a mess. She was lowering her head to the young couple. Her shoulders were shaking, and her face was covered in tears. It seemed to be the first time Jianxing saw Jianru lower her head. Jianxing watched as the young woman pat Jianru's shoulders unceremoniously, and the young man took out a thick bundle of money from his bag, handed it to Jianru. Jianru hesitated before taking it. The day's light was strong, the evening's light was dense. It poured into Jianxing's eyes and brought a hint of crimson. Ironically, because of this hint of crimson, she was able to see clearly the smiles that Jianru's mouth corners quietly lifted while taking the money. Outside the sick room, Jianxing leaned against the wall, her head lowered, her fingernails were about to be torn by herself. Inside, a conversation is coming in distinctly. How could you say that? I've told you, I fell because I was careless. What does that have to do with their car parked there? Levi Cheng's voice was very low. So what? Maybe if the car wasn't there, you'd have been able to go smoothly. Jianru's voice was also lower than usual. She warned Levi Cheng, do you understand what's happening to you now? Your leg is crippled. How are you going to make money in the future? You can go hungry. What about mom? And Jianxing? Does Jianxing not have to go to school? You can't just... Levi Cheng's voice was barely audible. You know, this is extortion. I haven't extorted anyone. They look so rich. Do they care about this little money of mine? They are just kind, taking pity on your poor and wretched self and showing you charity, said Jianru. Their car is parked there. A car is worth enough for you to crawl a lifetime. Now they are giving you this money is to buy their peace of mind, you know. Levi Cheng said nothing more. No matter what, Jianru continued to speak. Anyway, the money is here. When you are discharged, we will move. Go to He County. Jianxing needs to go to school. I said, Jianxing must go to school. Go to university. She is not a Levi in surname. She is Jian. If you don't want it, then we can divorce. I'll take them both and live. Later. Jianxing didn't listen to the rest of the conversation anyway. Levi Cheng was bound to compromise in the end. Maybe he really believed Jianru's words, that they gave money just to buy their own peace of mind. The hospital was crowded everywhere. Jianxing felt noisy wherever she hid. So she simply ran out of the hospital and sat down by the side of the road. Soon, a young couple passed by. The woman sighed and said, Never come here again, I was scared to death. The man held her hand and said, Okay, we won't come again. The woman said again, Zhengqing has called twice. I know, we'll go back right now. The man paused, but the money just now. It wasn't really because of my car. The woman sighed and said, Don't I know? But seeing them sigh, forget it, they are just too pitiful. I heard that they have a daughter in elementary school, and a mother in her 60s whose health isn't good, just let it be. Okay, the man laughed, so will you explain to Zhengqing when we go back? I'll explain, this is charity, and there's nothing to hide. You are very powerful now, weren't you crying just now and shouting husband? Oh my, I was scared. So much blood, I was scared to death. Don't be afraid, your son will tell you a story when we go back. The voices faded away. Jianxing had her face on her knees, her head tilted, watching their departing figures, watching the dust stirred up by their footsteps, but the dust could not catch up with them no matter how hard it tried. Suddenly a gust of wind blew. Jianxing did not dodge, her eyes wide open, her face full of dust. When they first moved to He County, for a long period of time during the deep nights, Jianxing was unable to fall into a deep sleep. She shared a 2-meter to bed with Jianru and Levi Cheng, while her grandmother had to make do with a 1-meter to bed next to them. In order to make it easier to get up first in the morning to wash up, Jianxing had to sleep on the outermost side of the bed every day. The house was rented, paid by Jianru, but Jianxing still felt like it was someone else's home. She was cautious and stiff all day. Her brain was snapping and snapping, getting tighter day by day. When they moved from their old home to He County, Jianru had nothing but money, so Jianxing had to go to an expensive private school. It's strange to say, the private school was right across from the number 3 middle school, with only a road in between. Any number 3 middle school students who got into fights and made trouble that the teachers couldn't handle, as long as they paid, the private school would accept them. At the beginning, spending a large amount of money, Jianru was restless, started desperately looking for work, and finally chose the lowest cost snack selling. But she never sold snacks near number 3 middle school or the private school. She would rather run farther to number 2 middle school, number 1 middle school or He middle school. Over time, Jianxing could clearly feel that a consciousness in her body was slowly being numbed, until later when Jianru saved money to buy the landlord's yard, this consciousness that couldn't say exactly what it was finally disappeared unknowingly. A year later, Jianxing graduated from elementary school and entered junior high. Probably to avoid unnecessary trouble, the private school offered a full package from elementary school to junior high, without considering any household registration issues. As long as the school fees were continuously paid, she could attend high school in the familiar environment. Jianxing continued her junior high school in the private school, and she could only rely on the progress of the textbooks to prove that life was not repeating itself. As New Year's Day transitioned from 2006 to 2007, it was a Monday. The first snow of the winter finally fell in Xu County. The snowfall came a bit late and seemed hurried, leaving everyone amazed by the sudden silvery world they woke up to. Parents escorting their children to school were notably increased. Jianxing's home was located in an alley next to the school, a casual 5-minute walk, so there was no need for Jianru to accompany her, especially since Jianru had left early in the morning. Jianxing wore a newly knitted scarf from her grandmother. She exhaled steadily as she walked, the moisture from her breath dampening the wool and making it prick her face. Just as she was about to adjust the scarf, a black sedan stopped by the roadside next to her. A young woman got out of the car. Jianxing hadn't seen her for 2 years, yet she looked unchanged, perhaps even younger. The woman was dressed in a pink overcoat, unbuttoned to reveal a light apricot-colored mini skirt and fluffy white boots. She was stunning. It turns out she was from Xu County too. At a glance, it seems as if they belonged to the same world, but a discerning eye could distinguish quite a difference. After all, Jianru's attire had always predominantly been black, white, and gray. As for Jianxing, she had been wearing her school uniform for years. Jianxing stood gawking, her eyes glued to the woman unblinkingly. Soon, a young man emerged from the back of the car, unable to tell his age, but significantly taller than Jianxing. He wore the uniform of the local middle school, school number 3, with a bottle of milk in his hand that he was just about to put into his pocket. "Don't forget to drink it when you get to school," the young woman said. "I know, you should head back. Aren't you cold?" The young man then bent over to button up the woman's coat. The woman smiled, teasingly hit him and said, "You're so bothersome." "I learnt it from my dad," shrugged the boy before heading off. Crossing the long road, there were many who welcomed his arrival. Soon, the young woman's phone rang. She answered. "I know, I'm just taking your son to school," she said as she got into the car. The car vanished from sight soon after. The snow underfoot had mostly melted, no longer a pristine white blanket, but Jianxing's vision blurred. As she stared at the tailpipe exhaust, a strong smell of dust filled her nostrils and a vile stench of blood. The scent of blood that no heavy snow could mask. It hit her still not fully awake head. A particular pressure spot in her brain seemed to bubble up with a forgotten consciousness, and a box she had thought disappeared in the long-elapsed 2 years began to shake violently. A gust of wind blasted it, the dust layer on it light enough to be blown away. Despite being covered in dust for a long period, it felt as new. The dust box had never truly disappeared but had grown twisted claws and roots due to the ignorance over the years. The roots dug deeply into Jianxing's heart, causing a throbbing pain with every heartbeat, as if saying, "Evil will never end well. A thief will never see daylight. So I still suggest that you think more about your own life when writing essays in the future. After all, others' lives are still theirs," the Chinese teacher said. As she finished, the dismissal bell rang. The bell's sound pierced through the eardrums, jolting Jianxing back to reality. She made a motion similar to the one she made those years ago, trembling. She tried to pull her scarf up to cover her face, but realized she hadn't worn one that day. There was nothing to hide behind anymore. Jianxing felt a sudden heaviness in her chest. Her throat tightened and her eyes began to sting. As soon as the Chinese teacher left the classroom, she stood up hurriedly, prompting attention from her classmates. She didn't have the energy to manage her expression, and without signaling to Zulu, she squeezed out of her seat. As she moved, Zulu audibly dragged her chair forward, causing a harsh scraping sound. Jianxing found it even harder to breathe. "You could have said something. You almost tripped over my chair," Zulu complained. Jianxing didn't fully hear what Zulu was saying. Her eyes downcast, she murmured a quick sorry and made her way out of the classroom. The 10-minute break only allowed enough time for a visit to the bathroom. She opened up the faucet with shaking hands. The winter water felt as if it was streaming from an icy cave. It seeped into her skin, threatening to strip away her last sensory feelings. Yet as Jianxing watched as her skin turned a reddish hue from the cold, she didn't feel the slightest sensation of cold. Those who dwell in the abyss and the marshes are not bothered by the cold. Instead, they can absorb it, using it to fortify their protective shell. But what if the person she likes is under the bright light? With just a slight step closer, she felt the heat melting away her defenses, creating tiny holes in her shell. The deformed claws and roots were not meant for the light. To avoid these exposed points, they entangled in complicated ways, becoming more twisted, more hideous. Without light, nothing grows. Once the facade of hypocrisy is peeled away, the ugly truth is unveiled. She had no way out. At this thought, an uncontrollable sob escaped Jianxing's throat. She tried to swallow back her vulnerability, but the action only triggered a massive expulsion. The commotion caught the attention of a classmate next to her, who asked with concern, "Hey, are you all right?" As Jianxing tried to wave off the concern, her convulsions intensified. The convulsions seemed to be Jianxing's last stand. She tried to uproot those deforming things through self-destruction. Tears welled up uncontrollably, blurring her vision. As she held her stomach in pain, she couldn't help but wonder, if these roots were pulled out, would she still survive? "I can't take it anymore." After the history class, just as Xu Zhengqing stepped out of the classroom, Lin Yule shouted, "Damn, this history class makes me want to die." This time, the history test was a bit off the mark, and for someone like Lin Yule who couldn't even pass the middle school exam, it probably felt as difficult as a bonus question. There was a half-hour break during the big break, and Jianxing wanted to ask Lin Yule what he didn't understand, but the fatigue was too overwhelming. He could only give up and opted to sleep on the table. No sooner had she lain down than Zulu, sitting next to her, poked her arm and asked, "Jianxing, have you managed to do this question?" Jianxing lifted her head to take a look, grunted in acknowledgement, and handed her test paper to Zulu. "You take a look yourself." Zulu paused, stared at her for a few seconds, her face inexplicably pallor. Her tone was stiff. "Can't you explain it to me?" Before Jianxing could finish her sentence, Zulu abruptly turned her head. She didn't take the test paper and left behind one remark, "If you don't want to explain it, fine." Jianxing opened her mouth but didn't say anything for a long while. She just took back her test paper and continued to lay down. The day passed in a daze. Perhaps it was because of the scores. The class was particularly silent that day, and the occasional mention of Xu Zhengqing drew deep, meaningful sighs. During evening self-study, Zulu didn't call Jianxing for dinner, and Jianxing didn't feel like eating either. She went to the playground alone, not for a walk, but just to sit in a corner. Looking around, everyone looked the same. The school stipulated that everyone had to wear uniforms during the school period. A uniform can easily unify everyone into the same world. Family background, upbringing, knowledge, and even the most obvious physical appearance, as well as many other differences, are often only more clearly revealed after becoming independent adults. The misery of adults is not something that those in an ivory tower can imagine, hence missing one's youth becomes a routine ritual after midnight for some adults. To them, studying hard at school is the easiest thing in life. At least with this, effort can yield results. What about other things? Jianxing thought to herself, silently lowering her head. She stretched her legs, pressing her upper body very low. The leaves on the steps beside her foot looked withered and yellow, with wet marks from the melted snow sticking on them. When she touched it, a chilling sensation climbed from her fingertips all the way to her heart. "Zhengqing, catch the ball." A voice rang out, and Jianxing looked up reflexively, only to see Xu Zhengqing among those playing basketball. Xu Zhengqing was also in his school uniform. The sky was stained orange from the setting sun's afterglow. The basketball court was green, the plastic track red, the school uniform blue, and the youth was draped in colors. He responded, easily leaping to catch the distant ball. With a slight lift of his hands and a brush of his fingertips in the air, the basketball spun into the hoop. Scattered applause broke out, accompanied by his teammates' "Congrats, awesome." Xu Zhengqing smiled slightly. The winter wind lifted his hair, revealing his handsome face. He didn't say anything, simply flicking his fingers in the air. The youthful grace could not be concealed by the short winter days. Jianxing watched for a while and then slowly left the playground. After playing for a while, Xu Zhengqing began to feel hot. He greeted the others and walked to the side carrying his school jacket. As he bent down to place his jacket, he glanced at the gate and saw a female figure passing by. Xu Zhengqing squinted before finally looking away after a few seconds. Then Qin Jiming strolled over with a bottle of water, saying, "Heard you ranked first in the grade examination. Congratulations." Accepting the water, Xu Zhengqing, rather than being modest, joked, "Just verbal congratulations." "Damn," Qin Jiming cursed. "Okay, Bin will bring it over later." Xu Zhengqing clinked his water bottle with Qin Jiming's. "Thank you, senior." "Flirt," Qin Jiming cursed lightly, turning to head back to the classroom. After a few steps, he looked back and added, "Oh yeah, I asked Bin to bring one more for Jianxing." Xu Zhengqing agreed. As the playground was still wet, not suitable for prolonged activity, Xu Zhengqing briefly stretched his muscles before picking his jacket and started to walk away. At the school building's entrance, he ran into Pang Bin, who held out a milk tea without saying a word. Xu Zhengqing raised an eyebrow. "Didn't you say you'll bring it over?" "Isn't this exactly the case?" Pang Bin responded before walking away. Xu Zhengqing chuckled and headed upstairs. Given the numerous drinks Qin Jiming had bought, Xu Zhengqing found them a bit heavy. Along the way, he handed a cup to every acquaintance he ran into, until he had just a few left by the time he reached class 3. Lin Yule, noticing the drinks, immediately yelled out from a window, "Bro, is there one for me?" Seeing Lin's excitement, Xu Zhengqing couldn't help but tease him. "Are you doing all right in there?" Playing along, Lin Yule replied with a woeful face, "Of course not. I've been missing you day and night, can't eat properly," and continued to face Xu Jing's criticism. "Poor you," Xu Zhengqing responded, handing over 2 cups. "Here yours." Taking them with a smug smile, Lin Yule said, "You really love me, sent to." Glancing at Jianxing's empty seat, Xu Zhengqing added, "The other one is for Jianxing." Lin Yule paused, only saying, "Oh," after Xu Zhengqing had already turned to leave. He muttered to himself in confusion, "Since when are Jianxing and Xu Zhengqing so close?" Unexpectedly, Zulu replied, "They've known each other." "What? Really? How?" Lin Yule questioned. Zulu glanced at Jianxing's table and replied neutrally, "I don't know. But she knows many boys, even in sophomore year." "Really?" Lin Yule half doubted. Zulu was displeased. "What do you mean? Do you doubt me? Are you closer to her or am I? Do you really think she's as she appears?" "Beg your pardon?" Lin Yule stuttered. "Wow, what do you mean?" Realizing what she had inadvertently spoken, Zulu's face immediately became uneasy. After a while, she hurriedly brushed him off. "It's none of your business, mind your own." "What?" "But you're the one who brought it up," Lin Yule grumbled with a sense of injustice as he placed the milk tea on Jianxing's table. Jianxing hadn't eaten properly all day, and come evening her stomach began to retaliate, causing her significant pain. She endured for a while but eventually couldn't bear it any longer and went to the small canteen to buy a bread roll. On her way back from the canteen, Jianxing took the other staircase. On the 6th floor, she bumped into Xu Zhengqing, who was just returning to class. Xu Zhengqing glanced at the bread roll in her hand and asked, "You haven't eaten?" Jianxing had been thinking as she climbed the stairs that if she took this route back to class, she would have to pass the first class, wondering whether she could bump into Xu Zhengqing. But once she actually ran into him, her tongue froze and she couldn't utter a complete sentence. After a while, she just said, Xu Zhengqing gave her a quizzical look but didn't ask anything else. He simply said, "Qin Jiang got you a milk tea. I gave it to Lin Yule." Oh, Jianxing reacted, asking, why did he suddenly buy this? Xu Zhengqing laughed and said, "To celebrate the end of the exams." "Oh, thank you." Xu Zhengqing nodded his head, turned to enter the class, and Jianxing, clutching her bread roll, summoned the courage from somewhere and suddenly shouted, "Xu Zhengqing." Xu Zhengqing turned back. The plastic packaging of the bread roll was crushed in her hand, let out a soft rustle, and Jianxing pulled her lips into a smile, saying to Xu Zhengqing, "I heard you did very well in the exams, congratulations." "I heard you too did quite well. Our class teacher praised your history question-solving method in our class," Xu Zhengqing replied. Jianxing stammered a bit, "Really?" "Yeah, keep up the good work in the final," Xu Zhengqing said. Jianxing laughed and replied, "Sure, you too." After that, each went their own way. It was cold, no one was in the hallway, and the wind seemed fiercer, but Jianxing didn't feel cold. She returned to her seat and saw a glass of milk tea on her desk. Lin Yule said, "That was from Xu Zhengqing." "I know," Jianxing replied, holding the milk tea in her hand, which spread a gentle warmth. Perhaps it was because the midterm exams had weighed everyone down, but for a lengthy period after, things didn't seem as light-hearted as they were in the first half of the semester. The transition class seemed even quieter due to academic pressure and the progress of the syllabus. The hallways were no longer filled with clusters of chatting students due to the cold weather, and everyone spent more time in their classrooms, flipping through page after page of test papers. Jianxing used to feel that she could glimpse Xu Zhengqing's figure walking by whenever she sat by the window. After all, they were both on the same floor, even if they had no special connection. Occasional encounters were likely. But now, a month had passed, and during a Chinese composition class, Jianxing suddenly realized that she hadn't seen Xu Zhengqing in quite a long time. Even if they were in the same school and on the same floor, running into each other required a considerable amount of luck. Not to mention after graduation. This thought filled Jianxing's mind as she silently repeated the university entrance requirement for aerospace engineering several times in her mind. In late December, the winter solstice brought a heavy snowfall. Grandma's joints were not so good, and the pain worsened in winter, her steps no longer as lively as in spring and summer. She used to love wandering around Jianxing's house whenever she was free, but now she could only huddle in her room and watch TV. Knowing that Grandma's activity was limited during winter, Jianru would move the only TV in the house to Grandma's room at the beginning of each winter. The chilly weekend followed a meal with Grandma pulling Jianxing into her room to watch TV. There weren't many channels available since they didn't have cable, so they were limited to a few programs. "Let's watch My Fair Princess again. Little Swallow is so interesting." Grandma positioned Jianxing at the edge of the bed, pulling her hand to stuff it under the quilt. The pose felt awkward for Jianxing, causing her to laugh and say, "I am not cold." "How can you not be cold? Everyone is cold," Grandma said as she got up. "I will fetch a hot water bottle for you." "There's no need," Jianxing stopped her. "I really don't need one. I'll huddle under the blanket if I'm cold." "All right then, you suffered poor health as a child, and now you are in high school. You can't go around being careless." "I understand." While talking, the TV played a scene where the emperor, in disguise, stumbled upon Xie Yingying. During the farewell, the obsolete TV broadcast the melancholic and seemingly murmured song, "One journey through the mountains and one through the waters, Trensel Tower overlooking the sky, heartbreak beyond repair. The mountains have no reliance and the waters no anchoring, grass is full of sorrow, bidding farewell to the royal sons. Good times are hard to come by, as are chance encounters through mountains and rivers. If the three lives are fortunate enough to meet, do not ask about what has been long lost." "Ah, it's not that easy to enter a nobleman's house," Grandma sighed incessantly. Jianxing laughed. "True, but the emperor does not genuinely love her, probably out of guilt for Shayuhei." Hearing this, Grandma gave Jianxing a somewhat peculiar look. Jianxing acted nonchalant, but after a while when Grandma looked over again, Jianxing couldn't help but laugh. "Grandma, how old am I?" I can understand what's happening in these dramas. For some reason, Jianxing suddenly detected a hint of unease on Grandma's face. Puzzled, she asked, "What's wrong?" "Nothing. Yes, you're grown up. It's about time you understand," Grandma muttered, and her hand noticeably trembled. Jianxing frowned, grabbed the remote, and lowered the volume usually turned up loud for Grandma. It became notably quieter in the room. Jianxing took out a candy for Grandma and asked again, "What's wrong?" This was the first time Grandma didn't immediately pop the candy into her mouth. Instead, she gazed at Jianxing asking, "Jianxing, let me ask you, does your school, you're grown now, I understand, you're at the age. The boys and girls at school are grown up. I wanted to ask you, do you?" She couldn't bring herself to ask. Jianxing knew what she wanted to ask and said, "No, no one likes me. They lack taste." Grandma didn't sound pleased. Then she looked at Jianxing again and asked, "Do you like any boys?" Jianxing paused while unwrapping the candy. Her actions were subtle, but because the rustling sound was distinctive enough, even a slight pause created a noticeable effect. Grandma looked suspicious, gripping Jianxing's hand a bit tighter. Jianxing assumed her notion was mere worry, so she smiled and said, "I'm so busy with high school, how would I have time for that?" This seemed like a denial, but she didn't use the word no. Grandma sounded half convinced. Then she added, "Jianxing, we can't follow the others and start dating too young, you understand? We are here to study and aim for university." Jianxing managed to smile and said, "I understand." When she exited Grandma's room, the melancholic songs were still playing on the TV. Jianxing stood at the door, staring blankly at the shallow layer of snow in the yard. She was a little surprised. She always assumed that Grandma would support her no matter what. She believed Grandma was not like Jianru. At least, not just someone who would ask her to enter university to make up for the regrets in Jianru's life. Meow, a familiar little stray cat, was walking, leaving paw prints in the snow, asking for food. Jianxing flashed back to a moment when Xu Zhengqing was bending down to tease the cat, and she smiled gently, saying, "Wait a moment." She went to the kitchen, where there was actually not much that a cat could eat. After rummaging around for a while, she found a boiled egg from breakfast that hadn't been eaten. She peeled it, broke the white and the yolk into small pieces, and gave it to the cat. The small cat sauntered off after eating, and Jianxing watched its tail held high as it left, her lips slowly curving into a smile. At this moment, there seemed to be a noise from the living room. Jianxing looked over and saw what vaguely looked like the figure of her grandmother. She glanced suspiciously at her grandmother's room, which indeed had the door ajar, so she got up and went to the living room. There she saw her grandmother holding 3 incense sticks, her hand touching the center of her forehead, her eyes closed in devout prayer. Curious, Jianxing asked Grandma, "What are you doing?" Grandma was startled, then seemed to remember something, and hurriedly said, "Jianxing, come quickly, offer a stick of incense to the Bodhisattva." "Now?" Jianxing asked. "It's not a festival or New Year, so why are we offering incense?" Children these days don't understand anything and talk nonsense," Grandma criticized, stuffing 3 incense sticks into her hand. "As long as you want to offer, you can. Any day is fine." Older people tend to believe in these rituals, perhaps because they have nothing else to rely on and they seek some peace of mind this way. Seeing the stern look on her grandmother's face, Jianxing quickly acquiesced. "All right, I'll do it." Ever since she had memories, she had been worshipping this Guanyin statue with her grandmother. She was well versed in the ritual. Her grandmother's voice chanting, "May Jianxing be healthy and safe, may Jianxing be healthy and safe," echoed in her ears. The sound of an elderly person always seemed to have a hypnotic power, emanating a force that could calm one's heart. It was as if it could take a person across countless times and ages, still able to smile at the vicissitudes of life in the end. Initially, Jianxing was merely going through the motions, but gradually she felt her heart grow calm. The air around her was filled with the scent of incense, her thoughts slowly drifting to Xu Zhengqing. Then in her heart, she secretly replaced each Jianxing in her grandmother's chant with Xu Zhengqing, wishing him health and safety, wishing him eternal youth.